The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there, welcome back to the least comfortable show on the web. It is, of course, The System is Down, where we talk about all the uncomfortable topics like conspiracies, politics, and religion. If you're new here, welcome to the show. Go find the person who invited you, give him a big hashtag #MeToo kiss on the mouth, and slap on the rear from you and me, because I appreciate you being here and because you're going to enjoy it. And I know you're going to enjoy it even though it's another late episode, even though it's not first thing Monday morning like I always try to do. You're going to enjoy it even if you already watched it before when it aired. Yes, this is a TAXED episode. This is a rerun, but I wanted to. So I had a really extremely busy week, and last couple of weeks leading up to last week, I was trying to get done that the latest Jorgensen video, the War is Over one. Check that out on our page. Look up Joe Jorgensen War is Over. It's the latest campaign piece or ad that I did for them right before last week when I had our Royal Family Kids Camp that we do every single year. My wife and I, you guys know my wife. I can stop referring to her as my wife because she is a part of the show. Kayla and I serve at every year, and that we've talked about on previous episodes, trying to look up and remember what episode it was that I had our director on there on the show. It was back in episode 107. If you want to hear more about the camp that we do, if you want to find out how you can donate to that and help out, and it's a camp for foster kids. Awesome week, giving them a time to actually just be a kid and to just let loose and help them work through their life. And it's a great time. It's a great time. I was able to go and lend my video services to them. I've been a counselor for the last 5 years, and then this year we decided to incorporate video. So, of course, I was the one to do it, and it was a lot of sleepless nights. Make sure these kids have something fun to watch in the morning, a recap of their night before. Probably be posting video of that endeavor, a safe video that won't show the kids' faces or anything, but it'll give you guys kind of a peek into what that camp is and what it's like, and give you a little bit more information on that. Stay tuned for that. It'll be hopefully posted within the next week or so once it gets approved on all the pages. I'll share it around all the pages. You'll see it. But if you want to find out more information about Royal Family Kids Camp, the camp that we are a big part of, we love volunteering for every single year and doing their mentor. Kayla is actually the director of our mentor club, and I'm kind of co-director. So we're pretty heavily involved in it. Go to episode 107 with Wendy Bazat. She is the director of the camp. Now, all that to say that is the reason why I do not have a new episode this week. It is a taxed episode. It is a cut from Spike's show that I was a part of on Muddied Waters Media, where he had on Mr. Trapt, Mr. Chris Taylor Brown, to debate the future of freedom. It wasn't a debate. It was a conversation. It was an argument, and it was a bit of a mess, but it was still a lot of fun. And I was on there to kind of moderate, to ding the bell and let them know when people aren't able to understand them because they're talking over each other. But you're going to see all that. You're gonna witness it all here on The System is Down, because I don't have time. I didn't have time for a new unique interview for this week. There, I said it. I did not have time because I was gone up until a couple days ago. Also, that's why my nails are painted so beautifully. One of the tiny little girls there insisted on painting my fingernails. And when I say insisted, I mean she asked, and of course I'm totally fine with that. I was happy to do it. So what else? There was something else I was going to say about camp before we get into this. I don't know what it is, but it was an awesome time. It was a really cool time meeting some new people and, hanging out with these kids and giving them the time of their lives, and just helping them feel loved and feel accepted in society, regardless of their really, really awful situation. And again, episode 107, if you want to hear more about that type of thing. So, yeah, we'll get into the conversation here in just a moment with Mr. Trapt and Mr. Cohen. Before we do, I got to remind you guys about my sponsors. This show is, sorry, my brain is not 100% capacity yet because I'm still lacking in sleep, so bear with me. But this show is sponsored by Brave Botanicals. Brave Botanicals is your place for all the kratom, the natural things, the CBDs, the vitamins, minerals, and hand sanitizers and stuff like that, all the natural things that the government doesn't like that are, buyable still. So go get yourself some of it. I use their white Borneo kratom. Got it right here. And I enjoy it very much. It helps give me a nice pickup in the afternoon to get me through the day, and a nice energy that isn't like dirty caffeine energy. So check them out. You can try a free ounce of kratom at freeounceofkratom.com. Enter the promo code TSID so that they know we sent you, and that promo code will also get you 5% off your entire order for anything in the store. So that is freeounceofkratom.com, promo code TSID. Also, we are sponsored by you, the producers of this show, the people of the Downers Club, our family, our cult, our whatever you want to call it, the weirdos that want to get weirder and want to get bonus episodes of this show every week. As I always say, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, that's where to do it. I'm getting a little bit backed up on some of that stuff, and I'm planning to do a bunch of bonus here in the very near future. So you want to get in there, and you can get all the backlog for everything that we've done, the extended interviews, the game shows, the crazy offensive nonsense. You can do that and support this show for as little as $5 a month by going to patreon.com/The System Is Down and signing up for the Downers Club. All right, let's get into what you're here for, and I'm not going to talk after it because this episode speaks for itself. I will say that I've been in conversation with Chris Taylor Brown, and we are talking about him coming on this show specifically to get into more crazy stuff and some weirder areas to just have some fun with it. So be on the lookout for that, and I'll let you guys know as it comes up if it works out. And until then, please enjoy the TAXED, the re-airing, the rerun of the Spike Cohen versus Chris Taylor Brown from Trapt discussion on the future of freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get weird.
Folks, we have a really interesting show today. You asked for it, you got it, and we're about to find out how this goes. About 2 weeks ago now, I had some fans and followers reach out to me and say, "You better debate Trapt." And I thought, why? What is happening right now? And so I did. I Googled Trapt Spike Cohen and discovered that yes, there was in fact a beef between Trapt and several tens of thousands of my followers for some reason. And so I reached out to Chris Taylor Brown, the lead singer of Trapt, and decided we were going to have a nice discussion here to talk about the differences between our ideas and policies, the differences between economic nationalism and libertarianism, and probably some other subjects. And I brought on someone to help, for lack of a better word, moderate things and just be able to bring in viewer comments. I think neither I nor Chris are going to be able to keep up with that. So here we are. And so without further ado, I would like to make my introductions. First, here we go. So first, he is the host of the System Is Down podcast and also the head of Goulash Media. He is Dan Smoldt. What are we going by? Smoldt? Smoltz? What are we doing? Okay. Smoltz. Dan Smoltz. And he is the lead vocalist of Trapt. He is Chris Taylor Brown, who I'm looking at his kitchen right now. Okay. We are current. Yeah, you have a beautiful. Oh. Okay, that's a beautiful kitchen. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me this evening.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Spike. Pleasure to be here.
I'm like super excited to hear, what a libertarian, the main soul of a libertarian United States administration would look like, knowing that a lot of libertarians would just want to be left alone.
Right. Well, that is the core of what libertarians.
The main core question I have is, how do you do that? Because it's almost an oxymoron. It's like,
why is that?
You're gonna be a huge government and have power over a huge amount of people, and at the same time, you're gonna figure out how do you not have that power?
Well, that's actually not the.
It's like they take more power and more power every 4 years.
Well, and that's the problem, and that's what we seek to do, is actually get into positions of government so that we can start undoing that power and undoing the bad centrally planned policies of the Republicans and Democrats, so that we can go back to something more intentioned, which is the giving that power back, taking it away from the politicians and the bureaucrats and the well-heeled billionaire cronies who have bought and paid for them to be in office, and give that power back to the people where it belongs.
How would you guys, I think the main crux of all that is, how do you deal with the percentage of our country that they don't have the skills and education that's really going to make them the kind of money they're going to need without getting help? So what is your main strategy to deal with the bottom 20% of people? Because that literally, a whole political revolution start out of how do you help the people at the bottom.
Of course.
And yet those people who come out with that stuff use that for power in general, and that's it. And they don't even help those bottom 20%, but they say they will. So, if no one ever needed help, then there would be no communism. But people do need help, So, if you're the type of person can be productive, you want to keep as much of that productivity as you can, right? But with the precursor being that you need a peaceful environment to do your work or your job or whatever you do, so you need some type of law enforcement. So right there, you have to give up a certain amount of freedom. And I don't know that libertarians are on board with that idea enough to be taken seriously by Democrats or Republicans. And that's just the way I look at it, and I'm not trying to be rip on anybody, but it's just what I've seen that libertarians want is more of a idealistic, utopian pipe dream kind of thing.
No, what libertarians want is to dismantle the reason that the people are in the bottom 20% to begin with. So, for example, I've gone around to housing projects, liberal arts colleges, technical colleges. I've talked to people of all different stripes, most of them on the lower rungs of the economic ladder. And what I've heard over and over again is the problem isn't that they have a lack of skills or ability to get ahead. The problem is that, when we tell them to, for example, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, what we don't tell them is that the bootstrap license costs anywhere from $20,000 to $100,000. So, for example, when I went to housing projects and I talked to people there, everyone had a side hustle. Everyone was trying to get ahead. The problem was that if they wanted to get ahead, the Democrats and the Republicans had put occupational licensing and other regulatory burdens and taxes in place to make it functionally impossible for them to be able to legally be able to do well. Hold on. I gave you quite an opportunity to give your discussion. I am trying to answer your question. So when I talk to these folks, these were people, they were doing everything from braiding hair to food service to handyman work and everything in between. And it was illegal what they were doing because they couldn't afford the licensing. These were licenses and regulations and burdens that were put in place by both Democrats and Republicans and enforced by the militarized police state that they put in place. So when they saw the police, they didn't see people that were protecting them or keeping them safe or helping them. What they saw were people who were making sure that if they ever got ahead too far and actually were able to get out of housing projects and able to get out and thrive and prosper, they would be put right back down where the cronies and the bureaucrats and the politicians wanted them. So going to, when you say what libertarians want is to simply allow people to have their power back and to have their property and their rights back so that they're able to actually thrive. And of course, people are still going to need help, which is why we think that the Republicans and Democrats should stop making it illegal to feed the homeless or to help addicts or to do pretty much anything else without spending tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in various compliance costs to the local states and in some cases the federal government. What a lot of people don't realize is that Go ahead.
Nobody likes regulations. I didn't want to interrupt. When I was interrupting earlier, I was basically just going to say I totally agree with you. The AMA has been the sole reason why we have the healthcare costs we have.
The right AMA now. Or the
American Medical Association.
Well, I mean, there's many reasons for it. If you look at the history of healthcare, the main
reason when you're talking about barrier to entry for newcomers, it's the lobbyists. They all make an association, and every single thing you can possibly make money at, and they try to keep the barrier to entry for newcomers as hard as possible. Absolutely. Every industry does it. Every single industry. Not one industry does not do this.
Yep.
Every single one does. So it's almost like the American way.
Well, so it's the American way precisely because
I live in reality, and that's the reality I live in.
Guys, not to cut in, but Chris, I've had several people in our chat section say, "How do we know that this is him?" So, just is there a way that we can get your camera turned a little more towards you, so we don't keep getting that same question? People think that we're up to something shady here.
Am I here?
Are you able to turn it in such a way that you're in front of it the whole time?
Then I mean, I want my fans to see you guys, so like they get a great view of you guys this way. But, I mean, I can try and screw with it.
Whatever works.
Yeah, I mean, I just want them to see you guys. And I don't know, yeah. So, I mean, maybe I'll just pop my head over here.
So Chris is simulcasting
You might want to address, I've had a couple people ask in the chats, how is this a debate? Which we didn't really discuss that very much.
You mean the people that want us to just, go for blood and, rip each other apart?
Yeah, this is more of a discussion. Yeah, this is more of a discussion than a debate.
As much as possible. Is that just ask them if that's what they want us to do?
Of course, that's what they want us to do. They're the internet. Have you met the internet?
Then tell the internet to fuck off.
Yeah, that's not what we're going to be doing. We're going to be having a conversation about these issues.
They really want to. They really want it to be that.
Yeah. No, they said they want me to destroy.
I've seen a lot of libertarians going that route, and it's tough to see that. Really. You guys want to rule. You guys want to get some power and all that. And this is the way you treat people. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's to be fair, that's internet culture. I don't think that's anything exclusive to libertarians. I think that the political spectrum on the internet is one of the best places to go to learn to hate people. Because that's how people have that shield of anonymity, and they tend to often use it, which is why what we've been doing in our group is actually encouraging people. We're trying to encourage an actual a culture of kindness to actually reach people where they are, talk to them from their precepts, and try to push forward.
Coming to the Trapt page, and that's for damn sure.
Well, and that's unfortunate, and again we.
Hey, I am a Trapt fan and a libertarian. And this shirt I'm wearing as a bit of a joke.
Well,
not a Trump supporter.
We already let these douchebags get into our freaking conversation. So let's never do that again. You know what I mean?
So going back to
those people that are trying to get us to go at each other's jugglers.
Yeah, I have no intention of doing that. But going back to what you were saying, one of the reasons that in the U.S. we have such a problem with lobbyists is precisely because all of the power, the Republicans and Democrats have concentrated all of the power in government, in the federal government and in the state and local governments. So if you're a wealthy, well-heeled business person and you want to preserve your market share and stop others from competing, instead of having to innovate and provide value to the people, to the market, instead you can just make an end run around all of that and just go straight to government. It is a system of patronage.
Okay, so what would you say to the people who go, dude, that's exactly what the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgans and all those people did, even worse in the early 1900s. It's actually better now for the average American to somehow make it in the world than it was then.
No, the gap between wealthy and poor is the highest it's ever been and has been growing ever since the Federal Reserve was created. So what we are told about in those times, there were a handful of people, but also
you have to look at the World War II. The reason we had the boom that we had was because all of Europe was in tatters, just destroyed. No one else was going to be an exporter, so we were in the U.S. in the 50s and 60s, and we got pretty damn spoiled to the point where in the 70s and 80s and 90s, our multinational corporations, basically bought puppet politicians into making these free trade deals that basically imported or exported our middle class to all the poorest countries in the world.
No, so this is actually a trend. Yeah, so this is actually a trend that's been going on long before then. It actually started with the Federal Reserve and the income tax.
1971 is when it started.
No, it started in 1913. It started with the Federal Reserve and the income tax. Two things happened after those were implemented. One is that we had a war with World War I that happened the next year, and we've been at war ever since. And the other thing that happened is that we have had constant inflation during that time. And then the other thing that's happened is that we have had a system of patronage that has happened where lobbyists have control of government at the top. So there's a little bit of a myth that's easily debunked by looking at the data that during World War II there was this resurgence of jobs. What we actually saw was a bit of a recovery from what was the equilibrium prior to World War II happening, and actually before that, prior to the Great Depression. Another thing that happened was that the government did massive subsidies in the form of the FHA for only for white families, but for the majority of American families, where they basically subsidized everyone's housing by giving them homes, suburban homes, for anything from $8,000 to $10,000, which in today's dollars would be something like $80,000 to $100,000 for homes that at the time were worth anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000. So you saw all of the American people being given essentially instant equity at the expense of the future debt and the taxpayer. So there was a lot of patronage happening, and there was a lot of payouts that were happening, but it also led to massive debt, and it also led to the institutionalization and creation of a system whereby the American people look to government for their help.
When do you think out of the last 100 years, it's been about that since the IRS Act started, out of the last 100 years, how much of that time could a family support itself on one income? Just one person in that family making enough money to support a family of 5, 6, 7 sometimes. When was the only time in history, in American history, that could be done?
That was the reality up until the 1960s. The average
70s,
family
sold our middle class out.
But see, again,
that was what destroyed our middle class.
This is factually inaccurate.
Nothing
so this
else,
is actually
because the 50s and 60s were great, weren't they?
No, but they weren't great. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. So it is a historical myth that is easily debunked by data that demonstrates that the reality for those families, for the average American family, prior to
it ended in the 60s. So you agree
but it was no, I don't, because you're saying that it started in the 50s. I'm saying that the reality of human existence in the United States was that American households were able to be supported on one and sometimes a secondary, much smaller income. That reality existed until the 60s and 70s.
What decades could that be done? Where kids and the wife didn't actually have to work either.
Up until the 60s, but it didn't start in the 50s. The 50s were simply a continuation.
I'm saying the 70s screwed us with the trade deals.
No, what I'm saying is that this was something that started long before that, and it was a trend that continued on even through the 50s, which you're telling us was a great heyday period.
Explain that trend. What other than the free trade deals would have caused that?
The free trade deals were actually a net contributor to the American household. They were able to actually afford products again. It wasn't trade deals that caused the problem. The problem were the regulations and the burdens and barriers and taxes that were put in place as a result of a larger and ever increasing government at the level with the Federal Reserve and the income tax.
Are you a globalist in trade, Spike?
I am a supporter of people being able to trade with whomever they want. I'd like to go back to your
free trade globalist.
I am in favor of people being able to trade with whomever they wish. I don't think that government has any business telling you who you should be able to trade with.
So we're huge disagreement on that.
We are. I'm driven by data.
But you know that China totally engages in mercantilistic, and so does the United States. I mean, you're complaining that our corporations use our government to aid themselves.
Absolutely.
Which is totally what China does. Even more, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times more. I don't know exactly. I can't quantify it exactly. Way more than we do in the U.S.
Yep, absolutely.
So we're actually trying to fight a global trade war against a country, and we're trying to use ideals as to why we shouldn't do certain things. This is a fucking war, dude. This is a war.
It's not. So what we have is we have corporations that have created regulations that have made it
damn battleground, dude.
Okay.
That's not going to be good for American people.
No, so you're describing a war on the wrong fronts. The front is with the cronies that have created the laws.
War.
So you can do that.
A real war.
You can definitely do that on your side, but
guys, when everybody's talking, we can't hear either of you. So, try your best to take turns.
Yeah. So again, so what we have here is when cronies have created these regulatory burdens and these taxes and all of the barriers that they've used, that they basically use the government to create, they have made American labor and American doing business in America increasingly unaffordable.
I don't disagree with at all.
That's good. So as I was continuing, what happens as a result of that is they then take their labor and their jobs and their headquarters and move them over to dictatorial regimes across the world, and then they allow and they create relationships where they're able to use basically sweatshop slave labor and then import those goods back here.
Trump is actually doing something to reverse that.
He actually hasn't. So the trade deficit has gone up over 150 billion. So you can do that on. You can do that on your side. What Trump has actually done is increase the trade deficit by roughly $200 billion since he's been in office, because what we are told is economic nationalism actually doesn't work. They don't work. Economic nationalism is really just a doubling down of the failed government policies that have made American labor and American businesses unaffordable and have allowed the multi-billionaire cronies to simply move their bases of production to places where they have left it affordable and then importing it back here. Tariffs don't do that. But what tariffs do, but they don't. But what tariffs do is they raise the cost of the goods and services that we buy. So, but again, that's not what they do. When we introduce new taxes, which is what tariffs are, when we put a new tax on something, we simply make it unaffordable for Americans. It doesn't make doing business here affordable. It just makes it more unaffordable to do it over there. So you're screwing over the American consumer as a result of it.
Spike? There was none.
Inflation has been an average of 3% in the last 3 years. Here's the problem, Chris. I need you to use data. So if you're saying things that are factually inaccurate, I have to correct you. So the inflation rate in the last 3 years has been roughly 3%, which is roughly with the national average. He's also increased the national debt he is slated by the end of this year to have increased the national debt by close to $10 trillion. Okay, well, let's talk about trade. Donald Trump has increased the trade deficit by $200 billion since he's been in office.
Tell us why that's bad.
Tell us why that's bad?
Yes. Tell my fans why that's bad.
A trade deficit is reflective of where goods and services are flowing to and from. The problem isn't the deficit itself. The problem is the fact that under Trump, as well as under Obama and Bush and everyone else, American labor and American businesses continue to become increasingly unaffordable. You're looking at the wrong problem. The problem isn't them moving the jobs overseas. The problem is the regulatory burdens that were put in place that made it where that was a better way to do things in the first place. If you remove those burdens and those barriers and those taxes, not only won't it be affordable, more affordable to bring the jobs over. So then let's do that. You're talking about fixing a problem by increasing taxes. That's like saying that we should fix the healthcare problem in this country by putting the government in charge of healthcare.
Where we agree, and we agree on a lot. So
absolutely.
So here we go. So basically, so regulations suck. The government doing anything sucks. So let's just admit that. If they do anything, it's going to suck for the individual. But that's because a government is a group thing. A government is how do I preside or govern over a lot of people. So the individual is not going to matter as much. It's just the way it is. Sorry.
Right.
So knowing that, we go, how can we have government do what is necessary to be powerful, to be a powerful country? And that gets a lot of benefits with it too. How can we do that while giving the individual as much freedom as possible? That's what I would imagine is your position.
No, my position is you were starting good there. My position is because government is bad at doing things, we shouldn't look to them for solutions. We have seen what the government solution here is.
They're the ones who protect our lives.
Except they don't. You just said that they don't. They don't protect our lives. They don't protect our livelihood. What they do is create barriers and impositions and laws that make it harder for us to prosper and thrive. They are the problem. The cronies that leverage them are the problem. They aren't our solution and they aren't our protector.
Okay, so just tell me what here. Okay. Say Mexico wants to come kill us. What happens?
What happens is that they get stopped by us. If Mexico wants to come kill, why? Okay, why? What? Where are these Mexicans that are coming? Where is this Mexican army coming to kill us?
Just using an analogy, bro. Just
no, but because it's. I could say, what if the freaking Meekmoks come from the sky to kill us? It's absurdity. There's nothing.
If aliens attack U.S., what are we gonna do?
Okay.
We're going to use our army, right?
As you said, we're talking about trade, but again, now that we're talking about the Mexicans and the aliens coming to kill us,
at least say government does one thing, and that is protect us from outside threats. If they do anything, it's that one thing.
I mean, they've failed at that as well, but the bottom line is, even putting that aside,
guys, hold up. When you guys are both talking, nobody can hear either one of you, so there's really no point in overlapping. And this isn't a debate, obviously, but I do have a bell here. If we need
you're the man.
You're talking over time.
You want to use the bell?
I will listen to that bell anytime.
If I can't understand what's being said, I'll ring the bell, because that means most likely nobody else can understand either. For everybody's sake.
That's the bell. Go ahead.
Well, we're getting somewhere here. and it's like we're pretty damn close. It's just, what does the federal government really do? Do they, in my opinion, they protect us from foreign invaders, and that's physically to our bodily harm and economically, just as important.
You choosing to buy something from Walmart that is made in China is not an invasion. That is you engaging in.
I think that is against your fellow American. Like, you've never
I am certain that I am looking at your kitchen right now. At least 50% of what I'm looking at in your kitchen is made somewhere else. So are you going against your fellow Americans by I mean, again, we're looking at, I
literally am. I'm going against my fellow Americans to do things, and because I don't know of any, if there's an American speaker maker, I'll buy from them. I honestly, before Yamaha, but I just don't know of an American speaker system.
So then let's make that a reality. Let's get rid of the regulations that make it where it can't happen. No, tariffs. Okay, so hold on a second. Hold on. I want to give you an analogy here. Just let me give you an analogy. Let's say that, there are two lemonade stands. Okay, no, hold on. There's two lemonade stands. So there's a lemonade stand right here in front of me, and there's a lemonade stand a mile down the road. And so I put a bunch of taxes and burdens and barriers on this lemonade stand that make it so that their lemonade that used to cost 10 cents now costs $1. And the lemonade down the road costs 20 cents. And I go, I'll fix this. And so I put a 90-cent tariff on that. So now the lemonade over there is $1.10. That didn't make this lemonade any more affordable. It just made that lemonade slightly more unaffordable, which means everyone that's having to consume lemonade is now paying 10 times more, actually more than 10 times more than they'd be paying if I just got the hell out of it in the first place. And that's the point. Government makes things unaffordable.
More than the rest of the world.
Little Susie would be doing much better if I hadn't made her lemonade so expensive in the first damn place, which is my point. If I simply got out of the way, if government simply got out of the way, there wouldn't be a need for tariffs, because the consumer wouldn't be getting screwed over in the process.
I agree. Can I tell you one thing? I agree with you. And
let's go back to your Chinese kitchen.
Let's do the trade deals my way.
But there's no need for it.
No regulations inside the United States, and then the only regulations outside the United States is how bad is this country going to fuck our middle class?
Except there wouldn't be any need for it. The middle class is getting screwed by the regulations. The trade is simply a natural reaction of the market to the fact that it's okay. But again, if it's it's not more affordable to have work done on the other side of the planet and then brought here in tankers. That's not an efficient way of doing things. It's only more affordable because of the regulations that the Republicans and Democrats, including Trump, have put in place.
The cost of living is way low in the Philippines.
But that's way offset by the cost of importation.
That's why.
All right, we've got a comment from XB Passive. Jokes on both of them. Apparently, lemonade is illegal in my state, according to that Country Time Lemonade post. Just thought I'd weigh in with that.
Cost of living. Can we talk about that cost of living?
We can. It's offset by the cost of importation.
And then China, and then Mexico, and different cheap labor sources. Can we talk about the cost of living in those places versus the United States?
Yes, we can talk about the fact that it is offset by the cost of importing it back here. There's no cost savings happening from making something.
No, it's not even close, dude.
It is. You're not. This isn't being driven by data.
We redid NAFTA. Do you think it will help at all?
I think that it was a rewording of NAFTA that didn't really change anything. In fact, the one thing it did change was it made steel much less affordable by making requirements on the percentages of steel that needed to be used, even at a time when American steel providers and the people that are using steel in America are saying that those changes in the new reworking of NAFTA is actually going to make American products less affordable and make Americans more likely to buy exports. Again, you put government, who we both said doesn't do good things, in charge of deciding exactly what percentages of products should be made in different places. And that's leading to the harmful and abusive and inequitable outcomes that we always come to expect from government as a direct result. Again, going back to the lemonade thing, if Susie could simply sell her damn lemonade for 10 cents with me out of the way, there would be no need for me to stop Becky from selling the lemonade for 20 cents. It wouldn't matter. If someone wanted that lemonade, they could buy it for 20 cents.
Let's talk about the U.S. MCA. So let me explain to you why we even did the UCMCA. United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, I guess, or whatever it's called. The whole point in what we did was that when we did the NAFTA thing in '94, what that set up was Mexico and Canada being able to import a bunch of cheap parts that weren't fully made yet, assemble them in Canada and Mexico, and then ship it in the United States to avoid the tariff. That was an unintended consequence that happens all the damn time in federal government. And boy, was that loophole used to screw American workers, to screw the American middle class.
The barriers screwed the American worker. The whole point that they were even making it overseas in the first place and making it in other countries is because of the barriers here. If I make something unaffordable to do here, and then people do it somewhere else instead because it's unaffordable to do here, that's my fault.
Cost of living factor in? What is
in Canada?
Cost of living for the workers?
The cost of living in Canada is almost the same as here. That's not the problem. The problem in Canada isn't the cost of living. The problem in Canada, the problem here compared to Canada, is that the taxes are higher here. The corporate taxes are higher here. The various business taxes that are in the U.S. are higher than in Canada. I have a home in Toronto. It costs more to live in Toronto. The problem in Canada is not cost of living. It's that, or the problem here relative to Canada isn't cost of living. The problem is that Canada has a more friendly environment for the crony businesses that set this up exactly for this, because they want to keep American workers anxious. They want to keep Americans anxious and scared and not sure of where they're going to be able to get jobs, so that they'll agree to being taxed for the stuff that they buy every single day, instead of simply saying, it's the regulations that put you in that position in the first place. Get rid of those, and there's no need for any of this garbage. There's no need for a government to tell you.
I want all those regulations gone. I'm with you on that completely. Okay. But you're going to tell me, you're going to sit here and tell me that if I want to open up shop in China, I can basically have 20 workers making my stuff versus one worker if I open up shop in the United States.
The disparity is not that high.
You're telling me that has nothing to do with it?
I'm telling you that, first of all, the disparity is nowhere near that high. It's not 20 to 1. And second of all, I'm telling you that once you
it's there.
I'm telling you that what the actual disparity, which is more like 3 to 1, is more, or 4 to 1, is actually offset.
Let's talk about that. Let's actually talk about
real stuff. Yes, and that disparity is far more than offset by the cost of importing it here, which is the point I'm making. The tariffs aren't helping anything. The tariffs are just making it even more unaffordable to live in the United States. Which, by the way, when you make it more livable, more unaffordable to live here, now you have people not just moving their bases of operation, they're moving entirely out of the U.S. The people who can afford to do so are now actually moving out of the U.S. You see an increasing number of upper middle and upper class people that are moving to Mexico and moving to Canada and moving to other countries because the cost of living here is getting higher and higher and higher.
A whole different thing now.
It's not, because it all feeds into the same thing. When you keep increasing the cost of living as a result of barriers and burdens and taxes, it gets more and more expensive. That is the problem. What's that?
You're saying the United States cost of living is too high.
I'm saying that government has driven up the cost of living in the United States to unlivable levels for an increasing number of people, yes.
Okay, so what do you think in 3 big policy moves that the United States government could make, like how Trump did, just gutted regulations overnight? You had to have loved that. when he first took office, he just
it was largely window dressing, and it led to a net increase in regulation. You realize there are more regulations in place now than when Trump came into office.
He's not doing anything but the globalists what they want.
I'm saying that he is continuing the trend that has been going on with Republicans and Democrats. The difference is he fed populist red meat to his base.
That trend is screw the middle class.
It's screw everybody, but especially, yes, the lower and middle classes, absolutely.
Who could actually have good jobs and then, got those jobs sold out to other countries.
Yeah.
That's who I care about mostly.
Then why are you pushing for policies that led to their getting screwed over in the first place?
Okay, so when
economic nationalism is part of a larger left-right rope-a-dope that the American people are exposed to, where they are told that, the government's fighting for you against the globalists, and we're going to put all these regulations in place that are going to stop them, and the American people go, yay, help us fight the globalists, and then they put these regulations in place that makes things even more expensive.
One at a time. So, settle down.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the free trade thing is a big deal for me. So when you have rich country A, America, and poor country B, China, and they do a deal between themselves where neither of them are going to charge tariffs, and actually China's actually going to charge way more tariffs than the United States, which I'll ask you about later. What do you think is going to happen to the rich country's middle class?
If they've put barriers in place that made it unaffordable to do business, you're setting a question without putting all the factors in.
This free trade deal. That's it.
This free trade deal, absent barriers in the U.S., would not make a big difference because it would simply allow people to be able to trade freely as they wish, but it wouldn't lead to this massive suck of jobs and labor and investment from the U.S. into China if it wasn't for what led to that and what caused that to lead to what we have in the first place, which is those barriers and burdens and taxes.
We're only talking about, we're isolating basically one point here, and it's rich country A.
Yes.
There's a free trade deal with poor country B. What happens to the country A's middle class? What happens theoretically?
Nothing. If there's no burdens and barriers in place, nothing happens. You're pretending that hold on. I'm answering your question. I am answering your question. The problem with your question is that it presupposes that the only reason that the trade is leading to the jobs going from one country to another is just because they're richer. And we have we have multiple studies demonstrating that is not the case. The problem is the barriers and the burdens and the taxes that are in place here. The cost of living difference, which is nowhere near what you're trying to say that it is, to what 20 to 1. It's nowhere near that. It's like 4 to 1 or 3 to 1. That is more than offset by the cost of bringing it back over here. And so, no, you can do that on yours. What is happening as a result of that is that we are, because of those barriers and burdens that are being put in place, of course they're moving somewhere else. But that thing would not be more affordable if we had simply removed those barriers and burdens and taxes here. And that's the whole point. We both want the same thing. The difference is that I'm attacking it from its source. You're attacking it from its consequence.
Have a theoretical world where country A does a free trade with country B. If the richer country, will it have a better deal on a free trade deal, or if it's the poorer country?
Both countries would have a better deal.
The most simple question I can ask you.
No,
this is the most simple question I can ask you.
Yes, and absent those barriers, they would both have. It would be good for both people. It would not be a zero-sum situation.
It would be equal for both middle classes of both countries. One is going to benefit a lot more than the other one.
Absent those barriers, no. Absent those barriers, what can be done better over here and what can be done better over here people would be able to do better as a result of that. For an entire country to say, I'm going to do everything internally is not an efficient way of doing things. It is better to allow people to find through a free market of having as many choices as possible to be able to come to the best value that they have. I think
we're boring people with this one. Let's go to cops. Let's go to immunity.
Okay, yeah, I'll let you lead on this because I don't even know what you think on this.
Hold on. I'm the unofficial moderator. I'll ask the question.
Care about this a lot.
Hold up. I'm the moderator. I'll ask the question. What do you think of cops, guys? Go ahead.
I'll let Chris start.
Okay. I think cops are our last line of defense between us and pure anarchy. And just them being there is a huge deterrent. Massive. In China, they have 5 million soldiers that fight their wars, and most of them are inter-country policemen. So because they have a lot of freaking people there.
Wait, are you saying that's good?
No. I'm not saying this is good.
Oh, okay.
But it is, bro.
Okay.
So that's what they have. That's not good at all.
Okay.
Where was I at? I totally forgot what I was talking about before
you were saying the police. The police.
Our police. Yes. Okay, great. So our police, yeah. So if you don't have police, it's a free-for-all. Craziness. Mm-hmm. So, and we know 1% of our population is going to be psychopaths. They don't care about rules. I guess psychopaths and sociopaths are the same thing. Maybe some are more violent than others. I don't know. But 1% of the population is just not going to care about your rules. They're just not. And that's why the other 99% doesn't understand them. So you got this group of people who are willing to fight against that 1%, and the other 99% are like, screw that. I don't want to deal with that. Because just a few people can make a whole community's life really a pain.
That's what
these cops are willing to do that, and that's why they get more than the average American.
Okay, so I just
on the same level. I just told you why I think they're on different levels.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the flack that police are getting is because they're getting flack from the people that they are protecting the other 99% of American society from. That's where that's coming from.
I think that they're protecting 99% of society, and the mainstream media convinces half of those 99% that cops actually are not protecting them. That's what I think's happening.
Okay, you don't think that the data showing disparities in use of force and sentencing?
I will show you data that says there is absolutely no systemic racism in the police departments, and that it's more likely a black dude gets killed by a black or Hispanic cop over the last 5 years. Okay, do you want to dispute that?
I would definitely dispute that, and I would ask you, for example, when we know that...
You're going to have to show those numbers, because I have dug deep on this.
I've also dug deep and not come to that conclusion.
PNAS.org and look for no systemic racism in U.S. police departments. And we even had the Wall Street Journal put an article about it. So you're telling me you're disagreeing with Heather McDonald of the Wall Street Journal, right?
I don't know who Heather McDonald is. What I'm telling you is that the average American in this country, what we've seen exactly. So you asked me a question, and I'm answering a question that you asked me. What I'm telling you is that we have years and decades of studies demonstrating that police use of force against communities of color is higher than in white communities. Although, if you just make it income level, that disparity goes down quite a bit. So it's actually police use of force against people without power. But there is still somewhat of a bias against people of color, in addition to people who have less.
Those neighborhoods are committing the most crimes for the obvious reasons, right?
Well, what are the obvious reasons?
Because they're poor. Come on.
Okay, wait, no. What I'm talking about, I'm not talking about higher crime. I'm talking about higher use of force. So, for example, a poor person or a person of color is roughly as likely as a person in the middle or upper classes and a white person to use drugs. The level of drug use is roughly the same across income levels. There's differences between them, but not large ones. And yet, someone who is poor or a person of color is something like 4 times more likely to go to jail for it. Similar things with guns. People of higher income levels and white people are actually more likely than people in lower income levels and people of color to own guns, and yet there's something like a 3 or 4 fold increase in the number of poorer people and people of color that go to jail for gun ownership. So, and going outside of the argument about systemic racism or not.
Do you know why the mandatory minimum sentencing was done in the 70s, 80s?
Are we talking about for drugs or for guns?
Just in general.
So I know that, this was all part of the war on drugs. We had Democrats and Republicans introducing mandatory minimum sentencing as a continuation of the war on drugs. What was the main
reason they did that?
Yeah, you tell me. I'm interested in your theory.
It was to take racism out of it.
Okay, but that's also what hasn't happened.
Why that would happen?
If that was the intention, then the exact opposite has happened, because what has happened is that we are seeing massive differences in disparities of conviction and sentencing for people of color.
And that is because of the economic situation.
And if that's the case, I'm not even...
People are facing. That's why they increase more. There's more crime being committed in those neighborhoods because they have no
But that's
choice.
what I'm saying. There's not more crime being committed. There's more policing happening and more people going to jail over things.
There's more crime happening, which leads to more policing every damn time. I'm so sick of this like, oh, there's always a reason why there's a discrepancy other than anything that could be perceived as racism. That's the problem in our damn country.
No, the problem is we have people that try to skew data to hide from what is an obvious fact, is that people who have less means, so the poor, the homeless, people of color, gender and sexual minorities and so forth, are having more power used against them. They are not more violent. They are not more likely to commit crimes. And the types of crimes that they commit are different. So, for example, if you're a wealthy person, you can simply have the government hand you money from the taxpayer, and we don't call that a crime.
People in the more desperate situation aren't going to be committing more crimes? Come on, dude.
Overwhelmingly, that's not really the case. No, yes, really.
Morally better people. If they're being shit on like that, and they're still not, committing more crime, they're damn good morally good people.
Well, that's you that said that. I'm not going to disagree with you on the fact that people generally morally try to do the right thing regardless of their circumstance, regardless of how they're being treated.
Screwed, the harder it is to do that.
Okay, and that's why, again, when I was in housing projects, what I saw was people trying to get ahead in life. Now, you would call that a crime because they were running businesses without a license, and that is illegal. So I guess if you're calling that a crime, then yes, they were certainly doing so. But they weren't harming anyone. They simply had a business, and they were trying to get ahead. And your friends, the police, would show up and destroy everything and take their property with civil asset forfeiture, and then they'd end up they going to jail for running a business. Right, but here's the problem. You're against the regulations. It's the police who come to enforce them. It is the police who come.
Are you for any regulation? How about murder? Are you for regulating murder?
Of course, because we have to have a conversation now about crime. So I'm assuming you're not comparing murder to operating a business without a license, correct?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so let's talk about the things that should be crimes. So libertarians believe that something that is justifiably a crime is something in which someone has infringed upon someone's life, rights, or property.
Ideology.
It's not ideology. It is the foundation of what should or should not be a crime.
Chris, you asked the question, and Spike, give Spike a chance to rebut.
Okay, so
sometimes I'm just going to come in there with a 1 second thing.
Okay, so what happens? So the reason something should be a crime is if it infringes on someone's life and their rights or their body or their property. So, for example, murder, rape, kidnapping, assault, theft, fraud. These are things where someone has created a victim in the wake of what they have done. That someone has been harmed against their will. Operating a business without a license, there's no reason for that to be a crime.
How about you come up with a victimless crime?
Victimless crime, selling drugs. Operating a business without a license, engaging in sex work.
That's completely. It depends on if if that drug's illegal. Like, how about this? Legal drugs, those get people killed.
Absolutely.
We're talking freaking opiates.
If someone chooses to put something in their body that kills them, the person that sold it to them didn't create a victim. In the same way, if I sell someone paint and they choose to drink it and die,
the gang violence. The gang violence.
The gang violence is a result of the black market that has been created by the war on drugs. So, for example, during Prohibition, alcohol, which is now perfectly legal, you can go to a store and buy it, or you can go to an ABC store and buy it. During Prohibition, it was the gangs and the cartels who did it because they put that market in the black market. They gave that market to criminals and gave them a way to enrich themselves. So, by ending the war on drugs, go ahead.
I always heard that the Prohibition was pushed by the Irish politicians to make it illegal, and maybe with the Italian politicians too, but to make it illegal so they could all make a boatload of money off it.
That may very well be true. It certainly led to that. It certainly led to the mafia and the various other criminal organizations doing it. And we see that now with the war on drugs. The reason that the gangs are the ones selling the drugs isn't because the gangs uniquely are good at selling drugs. It's actually an inefficient way of selling something. The reason they're doing it is because of the black market that was created by the war on drugs. So perfect example. You end the war on drugs. Now drugs are something you buy at the store, you buy online, you buy wherever you want to, and you're not having to deal with a violent criminal element as a reaction. It makes communities safer to end the war on drugs. In the same way, it makes communities safer to end the war on sex work. You have sex trafficking, and pimps and everything in this entire black market that victimizes people, including the actual workers themselves, because you've put it in the black market. You take it out of the black market, and now, and again, whether you want to do a drug or whether you want to engage in sex work or anything else, what you are doing is you are allowing people to voluntarily interact with each other, even if it's in a way you yourself would choose not to do, you wouldn't choose to do. You're taking the black market out of it, which takes the vast majority of the abuse out of it as well.
Yeah, look, as far as drugs go, I'm in the lesser of two evils is no government regulation on that.
Okay.
So I'm
so we're on the same page.
Completely in agreement with you on that.
Okay, so
but would you as a president, as an administration, force states to recognize marijuana's legality?
They're not going to. If you get rid of in the same way that with alcohol, when the federal prohibition of alcohol ended, so too did the state prohibition of alcohol. Because here's what happens: the reason they're doing it isn't because they necessarily want to. It's because of the federal war on drugs, there's all this money that goes to police departments to enforce it. When all that ends, the states aren't going to want to enforce it. Why the hell would they want to put a bunch of people, put them in prison and spend all this money to enforce something that is not being reimbursed at the federal level? If we end the trickle down militarization of the police to enforce the war on drugs, then they're not going to want to do it. There'd be no reason for them to do it. And if some state says, you know what, we still want meth to be illegal, okay, great, make meth illegal. Or we still want heroin to be illegal, or we want to put XYZ regulations on it, that's on them to do because they can choose to do that. But they're not going to get assistance from the federal.
Have a problem with that police force using violence against anyone who didn't adhere to their drug policy.
Well, I think that I think that we need to be relooking at how we do policing in general in this country. That the concept of a top-down state policing, where a central authority is determining that we are going to send people who are trained primarily to use violence in order to deal with a community that is largely trying to get along with each other. Not to enforce, for example, if that entity exists only to stop people from committing rape and murder and kidnapping and things like that, very few of us are going to have any problem. Whenever someone's what
they mainly deal with.
No, it's not. What the average police officer does right now is minor enforcement of citations for revenue collection and enforcing the war on drugs. Those are the two major things that police do on a daily basis. Is minor citations and giving people fines.
And the cops.
I'm not. This isn't about. Okay, hold on. This isn't about blaming the police or the government. This is about changing policy so that what the police are doing is helping people instead of imposing upon them. But in the second, in the second part of that is also holding abusive police accountable. So, for example, qualified immunity. We have had since the 1950s, we have had something in place that says that police officers and other government officials cannot be held accountable for infringing upon the rights of the American people if that individual officer decides that what they did was perfectly reasonable. Chris, imagine if you could go to court.
Allowed that. Why did they come up with that?
To allow police to infringe upon the rights of civil rights protesters. That is what started it. Chris, imagine if you could go to court.
People, man, right?
Chris, imagine if you could go to court and you could say to the judge, Your Honor, I know I committed murder, but I think what I did was perfectly reasonable, and they dropped the charges. That's qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is what allowed Derek Chauvin to 17 other times infringe upon the rights of American people, including some wrongful death cases. He may have murdered people before he killed George Floyd.
Why is the Supreme Court letting them do that? The libertarians are all about the Supreme Court's supposed to use the Constitution. What is in the Constitution that says that they can't do that, one, and why, two, is the Supreme Court going against what the forefathers, I would think that libertarians think that they meant for policing law enforcement, right?
It was a terrible and egregious decision, and has been moving forward from the 50s. They strengthened it in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Most recently, in 2001, they added even an additional increase on qualified immunity, saying that even if it could be shown that the person that the officer violated the rights of the people and that there couldn't possibly be seen as reasonable, they can't be held accountable unless that exact same thing had already happened in that exact same district. These are terrible decisions from the Supreme Court. You have no disagreement with me on that.
Okay, so what do you say to people who say, well, if we do what you want, Spike, cops are going to be afraid to act, and that means
they weren't afraid to act until the 1950s.
And if Spike had not gotten his way, maybe that cop would have taken the other guy's life, and your life wouldn't have gotten taken.
No,
those people.
Police were not unafraid to act up until the 1950s. So that's easily debunked.
At some point, they got afraid to act. Why?
No, they're not going to be afraid to act, because what they're going to be afraid to do is to infringe upon people's rights. They're not going to be afraid to act in the reasonable course of their duties. They're going to be afraid to not be good officers. What qualified immunity allows to happen is for when position.
I think
it's not just my position. It's the reality of American policing up until the 1950s. There was never a police officer. There was never a police officer that said, "Well, you know what? I would like to stop this person from murdering me or the person that's near me, but I certainly don't want to be sued for infringing upon their rights." This is a canard and a fallacy. This was put in place, and we have the historical evidence to show it. This was put in place to allow police officers and government to infringe blatantly upon the lives and rights of the American people as they were protesting for civil rights.
They wanted them to do it more, right?
They were protecting them to be able to do it more, yes.
The establishment of the 50s and 60s and 70s wanted cops to feel free to do it more, right?
Coming from the post-war period, the Supreme Court was allowing police officers.
So what was making it so that they wouldn't do it more?
What was making it that they wouldn't do it more?
What was keeping cops from doing it the way that the establishment wanted them to? And so they had to go to the Supreme Court and pay off some of these guys to go, hey, make it okay for cops to beat people up.
It was happening prior to that, but the people that they were largely doing it to didn't have the means to take them to court. But what we had was the Civil Rights Act of 1871. We had the Civil Rights Act of 1871, which said that if a officer or a government official infringed upon the rights of a person, they were able to sue them and hold them accountable for it. That was completely perverted by the Supreme Court decisions in the 1950s and 1960s, which created the doctrine of qualified immunity out of thin air.
It wasn't until after the mid-60s that the first thing was ruled on Supreme Court wise with this qualified immunity thing. So not the 50s at all. So unless you're sure about that, don't say the 50s too.
The original cases started in the 1950s.
I know, but as far as when they were decided,
the decision may have happened in the 60s. I don't remember exactly when the first decision happened, but the original cases of what happened was in the 50s. It seems to me everything
changed in the civil rights movement. Everyone's like, "Oh, you're being too hard on the criminals," and then all of a sudden we got real lax in enforcing law, and then you had.
Wait! Are you calling civil rights protesters criminals?
I interrupted you the first few times, and then let me have some time too.
That's fair.
Oh,
Hey, real quick, I just want to give a comment from one of our listeners. Somebody said, can you guys discuss how the war on drugs is actually more dangerous for cops and makes their job worse as well? That comes from Andrea O'Donnell.
We're literally having that conversation right now. So,
in a way.
Yeah. Mainly, you're talking about a way of enforcing law that was becoming a problem with the citizens, and the way around that problem was to have the Supreme Court say, "Well, sorry, it's not the cops' problem," and they are the ones who came up with that idea. So it takes it's tough to become the Supreme Court guy, to make it onto the Supreme Court. Okay. So these are people who, when you're saying that they are wrong, you better have a high level of proof to say these guys are wrong. I mean, they probably earn that level.
Yeah, that's an appeal to authority.
I earn that level to be our Supreme Court justice.
Yeah, that's so in debate that's called the appeal to authority fallacy. It is that because someone has a position of power that we should simply assume that they're correct.
So the Constitution talks about a Supreme Court. What do you think about that Supreme Court then?
I think in the case of qualified immunity, they've been dead wrong, and they've been creating bad precedent on top of bad precedent. It's been very clear.
The Constitution's wrong.
I didn't say the Constitution was wrong. I said that the Supreme Court decisions were wrong. No, I said that the Supreme Court decisions.
And how did the Supreme Court?
I didn't say that the creation of the Supreme Court was wrong. I said that the Supreme Court justices who have decided on qualified immunity have been incredibly wrong on the idea of creating, and again, not just wrong, they went outside of the scope of their job. Their job is to interpret the Constitution and the laws put in front of them. There is nothing in the Civil Rights Acts prior to the 1960s that says anything about qualified immunity at all.
People are not getting what we're talking about. So basically, I just want to nail it down that you think the way that our Supreme Court for the last 50 or so years looks at police enforcement is wrong, and that the Constitution is inherently wrong because we can't look at this.
Wait. We could use that. Hold on. We could use that exact same argument. We could say that because you don't agree with free trade deals, which were passed by Congress and the president, which were created by the Constitution, that you're saying the Constitution is wrong.
They had in 1789. I want to go back to the same exact economic thing we had in 1789, but that's what I want.
So you want open borders?
Tell me about police officers.
No, hold on. Okay, whoa.
Okay,
let's talk about 1789. So 1789, no police forces outside of a handful of major metropolitan areas. There were no police forces. You had communities that for themselves would create private systems of enforcing the law. So we had no active, state police forces like we have now. There was no war on drugs or war on sex. We agree on that. There was open borders to unlimited and unregulated migration. There was largely free trade with a very small tariff, something like, I think, 3 or 5%. So if you really want to go back to what the founders intended, minus, I would assume, and I think we're on the same page, minus legal slavery and things like that. If you want to go back to the lack of regulatory burdens, open borders, free trade, no police, no standing military. We had no standing military either. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. You want no standing military. You want no active police force, state police force. You want open borders, and you want largely free trade.
No, what do you mean? I totally believe in National Guard. That's fine.
Okay.
There has to be a National Guard for each state.
And open borders for unregulated, unlimited migration.
As far as borders go, I definitely think it's been long enough. It's not the early 1900s. We are a country since the early 2000s, really, that are not going to accept any more people who are not skilled enough to do the jobs we need them to do. Other than that, they're not welcome.
Well, they are welcome because people are hiring them en masse when they come here, even facing prosecution by doing so.
It should be merit-based immigration.
Right. So we had two different conversations. You said they're not welcome, but they clearly are welcome. People are actually harboring them even though they're here illegally and they're risking prosecution. So not only are they welcome, there's actually a high demand for them. You just don't like it.
I'm saying the fur that weren't given the legal opportunity to be in the United States? No.
Okay, but again, you're saying, so there's two questions here. One is legality and one is whether or not they're welcome. You're saying they're not welcome. They clearly are welcome. Even in the face of laws against it, they're clearly very welcome to the tune of tens of millions of them coming here.
They're not welcomed by the United States government.
Well, there's a lot of things that aren't welcomed by the United States government. People that are working without licenses, people that are doing business without licenses, people that are trying to thrive and get by, people that are trying to sell things to be able to feed their families are not welcomed by the U.S. government.
United States.
What's that?
You're welcoming every illegal immigrant into the United States.
No. I want to end illegal immigration by making it legal.
I want to know what you feel about the ones that are here now.
I believe that they are welcome by virtue of the fact that they were able to find jobs and housing and everything else, in spite of the fact that their being here was illegal. So if there is such a high demand for them that they're coming here in droves and being welcomed by hold on, you asked me a question and I'm answering it. You asked me a question and I'm answering it. Because they are so clearly welcome, who am I to say to these people and these businesses who have chosen to host and hire and house them on their private properties that they shouldn't be allowed to do so? Clearly there's massive demand, and it would be wrong of me to try to tell them them who they can and can't associate with. So I certainly would not want to do that. I want to end illegal immigration on day one by legalizing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
So-
that's all I'm trying to get to is it seems like it's open borders with the libertarians.
Yeah, what the founders intended: open to unlimited and unregulated migration, open to trade, open to people being able to come and go as they please because it's none of the government's business where we go.
You think the way you are as a libertarian is the main way that mostly everyone agrees with you on immigration?
Are you saying within libertarianism?
Yeah. Do they all agree with you?
Every single libertarian, probably not, but the overwhelming consensus among libertarians is that it's none of the government's business where we go.
So the same immigration position as Biden.
No, Joe Biden wants heavily regulated
What's the
immigration.
difference between you and what Biden would do?
Joe Biden was vice president under Obama, who deported more immigrants than any other president, including Trump, in his first term. So that's factually inaccurate. You're saying, how are we different than Biden? I would ask you how Trump is different from Biden, other than the fact he's actually been slightly easier on illegal immigrants than Biden and Obama were.
And Obama was together. Okay, yeah. So yeah, use Obama in place of Biden. That's fine. But I would love for you to explain to Trapt fans, and there are a lot of Trump supporters here, that how you deal with immigration.
So you asked how we're different than Obama. Obama actually deported more immigrants than any other president before him, and Trump hasn't beaten his record so far yet.
He should be, though. I don't know why Trump isn't.
Maybe he's lying. So anyway, Obama wanted. In fact, it was the Democrats who originally introduced immigration controls with the Chinese Exclusion Acts back in the 1880s, and it was the labor unionists who pushed for immigration controls in the first place. So Republicans and Democrats, there's very little daylight other than their rhetoric. Their rhetoric is much different because they're trying to feed this constant divide between the American people so that they don't step back and realize that there's almost no difference between the two of them. But Republicans and Democrats very much support regulations. They on trade and on migration. They support a massive police and surveillance state on the border and in the border states. They support all of the various regulations that have been created that infringe upon our lives every single day, like Real ID and E-Verify and all of these other things that actually
get rid of all that stuff. I just wanted to mainly, say you believe that we should just not have an immigration system.
I agree with the founders that it is not.
Dismantle the whole thing.
I agree with the founders that we should not be telling people who they can or cannot host, hire, or house on their own properties.
We should know who's in our country.
Shouldn't know who's in our country?
Yeah, we shouldn't know who's coming from where.
Of course we know who's in our country because they're here in our country, and then they do business and they do things and they make themselves very known because they want.
But you do care about an immigration system. So you know who's coming in.
Again, people come here to make themselves known because they want to provide value to the market and thrive
as a vice president
families.
or a president or whatever. You would have some type of immigration philosophy to know who's in our country, or no?
We have the same immigration philosophy that the founders have, that it is none of the government's business who you decide to host or hire or house. If you're saying our government, I don't really care that the government.
Terrorist attacks. What about people who are going to plan a huge terrorist attack? Because people care about that.
They would be able to subvert our immigration system because they have the means to do so, like they did on 9/11 and like they've done any other time. I mean, you don't think that you don't think the border patrol is you don't think that the border patrol is actually stopping terrorism, do you?
They're getting through, so just dismantle the whole thing.
No, I'm saying they're getting through because that system doesn't work. So why would we not focus instead on trying to stop terrorism instead of setting up these massive dragnets to try to stop anyone who's coming here? Since that's clearly not worked, and it simply created a black market, which creates a massive growth in the value and cost of bringing people here, which attracts the very people we wouldn't want to come here. It attracts the cartels. It attracts the traffickers.
Do you believe you can change terrorists' behavior and how they look at us by official government policy? Is that what you're saying?
Well, first of all, most terrorists join terrorist organizations because they were constantly bombed and their countries were destabilized by U.S. government policy.
So we're going to deal with that.
No, it didn't just happen. It is continuing. No, it's continuing to happen. Syrian and Yemeni and Libyan and Iraqi and Afghan children grow up to fear sunny days
Trump has not bombed bunch of Syrian children, dude.
There are actually he has, and there are 15,000 more troops.
If you want to talk about that, it's
bombed
more
Syrian
Obama.
children, and he has continued the genocide. He's also you can do that on your side. He has also continued the genocide in Yemen, which has led to over 250,000 civilians dead, including children. It is absolutely Trump, and he has continued it. He has financed the Saudi government and Al-Qaeda, which is not only an act of genocide, but is also an act of treason. You have the U.S. government under Donald Trump who is giving money to Al-Qaeda and Saudi Arabia to prosecute a war against Yemeni civilians.
Right.
And they then join terror
I would
groups
love to
because
just
it's
take
the
all our
only
troops
people
out of
trying
the
to
Middle
fight
East
back against the U.S.
And out of Afghanistan, I hope you're on board with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, end all the
Right.
wars, bring all the troops home.
We don't even have to talk about that anymore. So, like, as far as take our troops out and stop being the world's police, I'm in agreement with you.
Good.
If another country wants to use our services, they're either going to have to pay for it, or they're going to have to have a compelling reason why we should join that fight, just like in the past. So that we agree with that.
Okay.
So I think the main thing is trade. Does the U.S. government are I think you would say they're not going to help you, but they're not going to hurt you. And what we have now is they help some, they hurt others, which is very unfair, isn't it? But can the United States government make macro policy, like big policy against dealing with other countries, to try and discourage cheaply made goods made outside of the United States and then shipped into the United States? Like, does that bother you at all? That the United States more and more cannot make the things that we need because they cannot make it at the right price. Does that annoy you?
What annoys me is that the price was driven up so much in the U.S. to begin with. Again, going back to the lemonade analogy, my concern is not that this person's able to sell it over here for 20 cents. It's that the person here who could have sold it for 10 cents because of the actions of government is now having to sell it for $1 or more. And the answer isn't to make the one selling it for 20 cents make it $1.10 so it's more expensive. That just screws the consumer. The answer is to remove the barrier, because if it's 10 cents here and 20 cents here, most people are gonna buy it here unless they really like that lemonade. Then they can buy it, and they're free to do so. The problem isn't the trade; it's the barriers and burdens that have been put in place. Again, we both agree on the outcome being the issue. I'm blaming what actually caused the problem. You're blaming the consequence of it, and that's the difference. You are looking at it after it has already happened, and what has happened as a result being the problem.
That's the only way you can look at it.
No, the problem is you look at the root source of how something happened, and then you address it from there. Because if I come up to you, if you're a doctor, and I come up to you and I go, "Doc, I've got a gash on my arm, and it's really bad," and you look at the arm, and I'm being stabbed as I'm showing you the gash, and you go, "Yeah, the problem is that gash is just really bad," and you're not looking at the stabbing that caused the gash, then we're going to have a problem. You're not going to fix the problem unless you address the harm that led to it in the first place. And the harm in this place are the regulatory burdens and taxes that were put in place.
The main harm to United States exporters is that we cannot price our stuff cheap enough that the world wants to buy it more than they do. We're already number 2 biggest manufacturer because we make things that other countries just can't make. And we're good at, we at least have that. But the stuff that anybody can make, China wins on that.
Because of the burdens and barriers and taxes. It's not because it's a wealthier country. It's because of the burdens and barriers and taxes.
I know, but hear me out.
Okay.
Get rid of all that.
Yes.
You take all the regulations out. Everything's out.
Yes.
It's just pure play.
Yes.
You still have rich country A and poor country B. Whose middle class is going to suffer if you do a free trade deal where both sides is just free? There's nothing on either side to make it more level, when one country's standard of living is so much higher than the other country's standard of living, that's going to affect the labor prices you may be able, the labor costs you're going to get out of that country.
Not enough to offset the cost of importation, especially when they're on the other side of the planet. So you asked me a question, and then you started answering.
Side of the planet.
It's the cost of bringing it back here is not cheaper. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. Oh, and also, here's another aspect that we haven't gotten into, Chris. Part of the reason that another way that we are subsidizing the cost of importation and externalizing it is by using the U.S. military to protect shippers from piracy. So here's yet another example where the U.S. taxpayer is subsidizing and externalizing.
They should hire their own Blackwater firms.
Absolutely. They should absolutely hire their own firms. And if you combine all of that, it will make the vast majority
What do you think about private armies?
When you say private armies,
what if I'm worth $10 billion and I just want to hire 200,000 of the best dudes in the world and go do whatever the hell I want?
Well, that's not. You can't.
Well, how would you deal with that?
When you say do whatever the hell you want,
whatever I want, who's going to stop me?
Someone else who's able to stop you. I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, where does that line end when it's like? Then here's why you would have governments escorting you across their waters and using their military to do so, or if their military can't do it, our military. Because if you don't do that, you're just going to get the richest people in the United States to make their own armies, and then we're really going to be screwed.
But that's what they're doing right now anyway. They're just making us pay for it.
Oh, come on.
The wealthiest and most powerful people, hold on a second. The wealthiest and most powerful people in this country are using their own private military that we pay for. This military is not serving us. This military is serving the interests of oil and gas contractors and military contractors and all sorts of various contractors. And
oil come to us though?
The oil would have come to us anyway because it has a demand and a supply.
Maybe not.
What do you mean maybe not? If someone wants oil and someone has oil and there's a supply and demand, absent any other infringement upon that or imposition upon that, someone is going to sell it.
It's not ideal, right? We have a messed up world where it's not ideal.
So the fact that things are not ideal is not a reason to allow for the status quo. And that is one of the oldest canards in the book is, well, things aren't perfect. Okay, things aren't perfect. Let's try to make things better. We talk about a so-called more perfect union. Imagine if the founders had said, well, listen, it's just like this. So we just got to.
So are you more of like every man for himself?
No.
Or the government's going to help the citizens?
Neither. I am in favor of allowing people to voluntarily work together in cooperation and competition to thrive and prosper in ways that centrally planned solutions from governments, from the Republicans and Democrats, could never do. We as libertarians believe in the spontaneous. Hold on.
Nope, you can't do that.
The cartel exists as a reaction to black markets that were created by government. All of the things that you were presenting, armies, cartels, monopolists, and everything else could not exist without them being able to externalize the cost of their system to the taxpayer.
Operate in the United States because of the National Guard and our military. That's why.
I didn't hear the first part of what you said.
The only reason the cartel cannot operate in the United States because of our National Guard and our military.
They operate in the United States.
They wouldn't even have a chance.
They literally operate in the United States every day. They make hundreds of billions of dollars a year.
Not in the open. They can't take over a city block.
They have taken over entire blocks in Southern California and Southern Texas. I'm not sure where you got that perception, but again,
tell me what blocks these are and what LAPD is trying to do about those people.
Besides getting paid off, not very much. And we saw the same thing during alcohol prohibition. We saw Al Capone take over Chicago. We saw New England taken over by Joe Kennedy. We saw this happen because when you put an entire market in the black market and just put it there and allow the criminal element to take over that entire market, you are giving them tremendous amounts of power and wealth for no reason. It benefits no one except powerful people who wanted to have a corner on the market. And when you remove that barrier,
I agree with you on the drug thing. Let's not give any cartels the power.
Exactly. But that has nothing to do with the military or the National Guard.
National Guard and our army, another militia would rise up, and we'd be under their rules. So the whole point of having a union, a American United States union, is to go. We all kind of agree on, 70%, and to enforce that 70%, we're going to make an army, and right there, that's it. That's all we are at. And so, if you aren't on board with that, you're going to be pissed off. You're going to be an anarchist.
How does How does an army keep us together?
Oh, come on, man. It just keeps a tyrant kind of guy from paying his own guys to kill you.
But that's what we have. We have tyrants that are threatening to kill us, and we have to pay for it.
Well, if it wasn't that tyrant, it'd be another tyrant. So we're trying to at least vote in the tyrant.
That seems not to be working, Chris.
Do. That's what we do.
But again, that seems not to be working. What I would argue for is a system whereby we don't have a tyrant, where you have decentralized the power. Libertarians believe in something called the spontaneous order of human action in a market and a people set free. If you contrast that with the brittle and top-down and inequitable and harmful and abusive outcomes that come from the government centrally planned market, there's no comparison, Chris. If you put the power back in the people, they're going to do way better. So the idea that we have...
Why do the mainstream press hate Trump?
Why
don't they want to keep him in?
Fox News doesn't hate Trump. Mainstream press is
half of the Fox News hates Trump. Shepard Smith, he hates Trump.
Shepard
and they
Smith
give
isn't
him all
with Fox
the time
News
of
anymore.
the day to talk all the shit they want about Trump.
Yeah, so
the two people who own Fox News are the Rupert kids, who are both liberal as you can possibly be.
So the American media is set up as a left-right rope-a-dope. So you have this side saying that if you don't vote Republican, then the crazy far-left communists are going to take over. And then you have left-wing media saying if you don't vote Democrat, then the terrible racist Republican Nazis are going to take over. But the reality is, if you look at the actual outcome and policy between the Republicans and Democrats, there's so little daylight, Chris. They're the same thing.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter who you vote for.
Years,
it doesn't matter. No, because Trump is literally done. He is simply ramped up what every president before him has done, which is what they did. Every president before, yes, he has. He has increased
a free trade deal,
which was window dressing that actually made things worse, according to the people who were pushing for a change. No, I'm not. What I'm going to give him is that he created a cult of personality and be able to.
I mean, thank you for doing that, dude. Thank you for acknowledging that it was such a bad deal to begin with. Hey, Bernie acknowledges that.
Yes, we disagree with Bernie Sanders as well. We are not Democrats. We don't agree with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders also has bad economic policies. The fact that Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders agree on trade should concern you. If you're a conservative nationalist Republican, the fact that a socialist Bernie Sanders agrees with Donald Trump largely on economic issues should give you pause. That should maybe make you wonder, wait a second, is there a big difference between these two?
About free trade deals.
Again, free trade's not the problem. The regulatory burdens were. You asked me about Donald Trump. You asked me about Donald Trump.
Hold up.
Go ahead, Dan.
Chris asked the question one more time, and Spike, wait and answer him after.
Is Bernie wrong about free trade deals?
Yes.
How?
In every way that I just said. The problem is not trade. The problem is the burdens and barriers and taxes that have been created by government, by Republicans and Democrats, that have made the cost. Hold on, you asked me a question. No, you can do that on your side. The problem is that they have created burdens that have made it increasingly unaffordable to do business here. And the people who can afford to move those jobs overseas do so. And everyone else who can't afford to do that just go out of business, or they fold and go work for one of the bigger ones. That is the problem. The trade deal is only the consequence, and it's not even the trade deal itself. The outsourcing of entire sectors of the economy is a consequence of those bad policies. The problem is not allowing people to trade where they wish.
Stay in office. Do you completely gut all business regulations on the first day of office? I mean, 100%, all of them.
I don't know 100%, but Joe Jorgensen would remove the vast majority of them, yes.
So 92%?
I don't know an exact number, but the vast majority of them.
I want an exact damn number.
I don't know an exact number, but let's say 85%
we're totally
of the
in
vast.
agreement. We would just gut it all. So you gut it all. Okay, I'm with you on that. From there, do you do anything to aid your domestic workers versus the poor country's foreign workers?
I just did. By getting rid of those regulations, I've fixed the problem.
Do you do
also by ending
anything
the empire and bringing the troops home and not having them externalize, allowing businesses to externalize their costs of protecting their shipping and importation here using our Navy, bringing them home so that they'd have to do that themselves. That also helps as well. Getting government out of the way and allowing the market to do what it does and allow the equilibrium of free choice among free people is going to fix almost all of these problems. And from then, it's none of the government's business who anyone trades with. But the idea that the government who created the problem that existed in the first place is going to somehow help us, that let the foxes in the hen house is going to finally fix this problem by adding taxes to us is foolish.
As the president, right? You'd be part of the same government.
Well, I would be the vice president, but
same U.S. government. We got our buddy Kellen in the background. What's up, Kellen? Say what's up.
Hey, Colin.
What's up?
That's funny.
We do have some more questions. If we want to divert to a different topic, we've got plenty of questions.
Dan, go to some questions.
Yeah, whatever's fun, man.
Okay.
I mean, look, let me say one thing.
Go ahead.
We're so close to agreeing on pretty much everything, Spike, other than you want less regulation than even I do, which is great because I believe there's some. I think you're farther to anarchy than I am, but we're both pretty damn far from the middle.
Okay. I'm fine with it. Yeah, I always thought we probably agreed on a lot more than we disagreed on. That's typically the case.
And that's cool. It's just about how do we get there? And is Trump actually against the interests of the top 0.1%?
Yes.
Otherwise, why would they be so against him?
But they're not. That's the whole Okay. Hold on. I was trying to answer this before. No, but this is what I'm trying to answer again. This entire theater that we have, that Bernie Sanders is fighting for you, the people. Donald Trump is fighting for you, the people. Barack Obama is fighting for you, the people. George Bush is fighting. Blah 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 blah. It's all the same nonsense. It is a left-right rope-a-dope that tells you that this side screwed you, so this guy is going to fix it. This is our champion, and he's going to fix it with the same policies that the people before him did largely, but with just a little bit changes on the window dress. Except he didn't. No, he didn't. There are 15,000 more troops.
There has to be something in you that goes, that's good.
No, it's not good because it was changes on window dressing that simply did nothing but actually make the problem worse. According to the people who were pushing for changes in the trade deal, they said that the changes that were implemented actually led to American-made products being more expensive, which will lead to more imports being bought. Now buying a Ford or a Chevy or a GM or a Chrysler is going to cost even more than buying a Toyota or a Honda or a Mazda or a Mercedes or whatever.
You realize the new NAFTA went into place July 1st, right?
Yes, that's correct. And the people who have been watching the actual change,
what the effects are yet.
Of course there is. They can look at the policies and determine what's going to happen as a result of it. They can look at the exact implementation of what's going to happen.
Moving their operations here, and they didn't because of the damn coronavirus, making it so demand doesn't necessitate whatever. Have them come over here and do that because of the lack of demand in the United States. But if there was good demand, they'd be moving over to the United States. That's the whole point of this new NAFTA thing.
But that's been happening as a consequence over quite some time.
United States and keep companies from going outside the United States. It's definitely going to do that. I can bet you any amount of money over the next 4 years that the new NAFTA keeps American manufacturer inside the United States to a better degree than ever before. I would put any amount of money on that.
The people who actually watch this stuff and are looking at the natural consequence of the policies are saying that the quota increases that have been put in place will make finally produced American goods. For example, dishwashers and air conditioners and cars and large durable products that are now going to be finally manufactured, what they call a final assembly, being made in the U.S. It's going to make them more expensive as a result of that, and is going to make imports that much more affordable by extension. Not that those things became more affordable, but that comparatively. And your answer, your answer to that, wait a second, let me finish. Your answer to that is to add tariffs to this product, make that even more expensive. So now everyone's getting screwed. The American worker's getting screwed. The American consumer, which is also the American worker, is being screwed. The American taxpayer, because enforcing this is going to cost more of taxpayer money, is being screwed. No one here is being helped, except for the cronies who put these in place because they ultimately don't care where it's being made. They just want to make money hand over fist. So then why would you support this? Why would you support a deal that the cronies, that the only people that are going to benefit from are the cronies?
The United States is the #1 consumer market in the world by far, and our politicians sold out the people who make it that. Which is the freaking middle class, the people who actually have some money to spend. Yes. Our middle class makes about $60,000 average. In China, it's $20,000 average. So we're 3 times the consumer that even the China's best consumers are. So the United States is so much the number one consumer market that we should make people pay to play. That's what I'm saying.
We should just make it more affordable to do it here. Why would we make people pay to play if we could just let it be more affordable here? Everyone would come here. Not only would there be more small business growth and entrepreneurship growth and jobs coming back from those large businesses, but you'd have foreign businesses bringing their work here too. What do you mean pay to play? Why would you tell someone, if you want to do business where we are, you have to pay? Okay, well then I won't do business there. I mean, that makes no sense at all. Why would you do the opposite? Say, make it more affordable to do business here so everyone can prosper.
But what has changed over the last 30, 40 years? Only one thing, and that was the new NAFTA changed into a new trade deal. That was the only difference that we can even speak of. No, it's not the only difference. It's not the only difference. That is the consequence of the regulations that happen. I've been telling you the difference. An ever-increasing growth in taxes, regulations, and other burdens that have made it impossible for the American people to thrive and prosper here. I know what, dude, I'm talking about what has changed over the last 40 years of government policy. And the only thing that's changed is one new free trade deal since those trade deals actually went into practice. Since the trade deals went into practice, since NAFTA and all that stuff.
Multiple things have changed. An ever-increasing growth. There's been a trend of an ever-increasing growth in the cost of doing business in the U.S. as a direct I'm talking about government policy. Taxes are government policy. Tariffs are government policy. Regulations are government policy. Burdens and barriers that are imposed upon by various regulatory agencies at both the federal, state, and local level are government policies. They are the very implementation of government policies with one express purpose: to keep the American people anxious and jobless and increasingly desperate for only one reason: to keep them at each other's throats, to keep them reliant upon government, and to keep them thinking that their only options they have are 2 bad options every 4 years. That's the only purpose of this: to keep people so desperate that they have myopia and that they have tunnel vision and not be able to step back and in a calm way look and go, wait a second, these people are all on the same side.
Our country is so not what you say they are that they can actually, identity politics actually gets them to vote for someone or not. That's how good they have it in the United States.
That's economically not having speaking. It good. That's not having it good. I'm not.
It's having pretty damn good when you can both bitch about identity politics.
Well, okay, so when you're saying bitch about, you're not talking about someone complaining about U.S. trade policy. Because, so for example, you're saying that someone who's complaining about...
telling them why it's happening to them by U.S. trade policy.
Okay, but and they're telling you why things are happening as a result of police brutality. When I hear people say things like "stop bitching, stop being a victim," usually what I hear is someone saying, "I don't want to hear what you're saying because it doesn't affect me, or I don't think it's real."
Guys, we've had like 100 people asking to get you guys' thoughts on the ATF, NFA, Second Amendment, and shit like that. So
yeah, go first, Chris.
I agree with Spike on all of it. We probably don't even need to talk about that.
Yeah, get rid of all of it.
Get rid of all of it.
Okay. All right.
Next question, Dan.
Let's do questions.
Let's do some questions. Yeah, let's do some questions where we each have like 20, 30 seconds to answer it, and then we can wrap up.
Love it.
Sounds good. All right. We've got Richard Manzo asked, if we move to a merit-based immigration system, what advanced degrees and professional skills do you hold that would make you personally eligible for immigration to the United States if you were born somewhere else?
Chris, Chris answered the last one first. I'll answer this one. I don't have any degrees, but I owned multiple small businesses that I grew into successful ones over the course of 20 years, which in most merit-based systems would allow me to be able to enter a country. And I'm not arguing for merit-based immigration. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and so what I would say, in the United States, we need to protect our small business guys. And for everything you can do in the United States, someone else can do it outside the United States cheaper than you. That's a fact. That's what I would tell the middle class of America and the small businesses of America. And then I would say, because knowing that's a fact, let the United States government protect you from those cheaper countries who are going to outsell or who are going to undercut you in your business.
I have to respond to this. So we've already established why it's more expensive here. So this is similar to when people say a government has made the cost of healthcare so high that we can't afford it, so let's put government in charge of healthcare so it's free. An imposition on the market by government is not a reason to allow government to have further impositions on the market. It's a reason to get it out of it. So I agree with you that it is increasingly unaffordable for people to do business in the United States, for people to have jobs and be employed in the United States. And I recognize that the economic nationalism, quote unquote, is simply another rung to what makes it more unaffordable. It is not fixing it. It is a ploy to those on the populist right who believe that the problem is trade and immigration instead of the regulations that are in place. While on the populist left, they do the same thing through people like Bernie Sanders, saying that these allowing, government allowing people to do business where they wish is the problem instead of government putting barriers. So you have a system where, because government doesn't have total control of trade, they're using total control of the regulatory environment here to make things unaffordable and to have us choked off so that we then agree to give them even more control of other sectors of the economy, in this case trade. It's not going to fix it. It's simply going to make government larger.
Yeah, well, here's my spiel on that whole thing.
Okay.
Once you say, I know I don't want to just defend my person against death, and I'd like someone else to do that, you give up so much freedom. And every libertarian needs to understand that concept. I'm sorry that you cannot be as free as you want to be. We're damn free. I mean, I can do basically anything I want. I mean, there's nothing I can't. I mean,
there's a lot of things you can't do.
I'm just saying, I must not need to do them. You know what I mean?
That's fair. There may be a lot of things. Yeah, you may not want to do them, but there's many things you actually cannot do. But
I'm just saying, I'm happy with what I'm allowed to do, and I'd love to just see more tens of millions of Americans get good paying jobs like we had in the 50s and 60s. So that's what I would like to go back to that time. And also I'd like to go back to the late.
Oh no. Did we lose Chris?
Did we lose Chris?
Am I back?
Oh no. Okay, you're back. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Whoa, dude. It's just like totally like when my computer went out.
And the internet is blowing up saying that we cut you off because
no, we didn't cut Chris off. Go ahead. Here, I'm gonna let you have the final word on trade, because we're gonna just go back and forth endlessly, and then that'll let Dan. So go ahead and finish your final word on trade, and then Dan can ask some more questions. Just
basically that, the economic nationalism part of it is that we're all a country that's trying to get to a better good. I would think. I would hope that we're all that way. So I'm fine with helping people, do better in life. I'm not so right wing that I'm like, just me and screw you all. I'm not into that. So I don't know if I'd be a Democrat or Republican or whatever. I'm just a American nationalist who cares about our middle class more than the upper middle class and the 0.1% and the 1%, and if only to keep them a powerful sector so that you have somebody to sell things to, especially when you live inside the United States. I know that multinational corporations don't care at all, but I mean, there's just no patriotism in the United States, man. It's everybody for themselves. And that sucks to me. And I hope someday we can change that, and that we do what we can to be a better team and not so much a better I. But that sounds communist totally. But that's why I think everything is gray. Nothing is black or white. It's a combination of a bunch of things that work, and I think everybody from libertarians to Democrats to Republicans have some good ideas.
Okay.
And it sucks that we all are so emotional about our ideas, like 2-year-olds, that we can't just sit back and have the real conversation, because that real conversation elicits so much damn emotion to everybody. The
emotion was very unfortunate. Dan, go ahead. So Dan, ask some. Just ask some random questions, and Chris and I will keep our responses to like 20, 30 seconds. We'll do a few of those, and then we can wrap up.
That's great.
Oh no, we lost Dan. Hold on, Dan. Your audio. We have no audio.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
Hey.
Get in the future.
Go.
So cool. Quite a few people have been asking you guys' thoughts on nuclear energy.
Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you go first.
I am not the guy to talk to about nuclear energy. I think it's probably a great thing to go for, and a few Chernobyls or, once every 20 years issue should be, we should be able to deal with that for such a cheap source of energy.
Yeah, so I think especially where we're facing issues with the climate, I think any conversation about green energy, cheap energy, or ending climate change that isn't centered around nuclear energy is a largely self-serving and not very effective or serious argument. I think nuclear energy, at least for the foreseeable future, is the way forward. It is much safer than it has been in the past. Even when you factor in, like Chris said, even when you factor in those occasional things that have happened, if you weigh it against the amount of environmental damage that would happen as a result of other types of energy producing that same amount of energy, it would be far worse. You think of all of the oil spills and the oil leaks and the dumping of coal ash and other toxins into rivers and things and into the air and everything. Nuclear energy is very, very cheap. It is very, very clean, and I think that we should be deregulating that market and allowing for more innovative solutions such as salt thorium reactors and other molten core reactors to be able to provide us with the energy that we need. I think nuclear, at least until fusion is something that is able to be an actual sustainable source of energy, I think nuclear is the way. So go ahead, Dan.
Okay, a lot of people are also asking about, and some of these obviously are going to be more directed at one or the other of you, but that's just what it is. People are asking about Trump and Epstein, and do you guys think that, there's anything there?
Go ahead, Chris.
Am I there? Am I here?
Yeah. He asked about Epstein and Trump, and if you thought there was any relationship there.
Oh, so what I've heard about that is that in 2008, Trump got wind that Epstein was, soliciting girls' first massages, and as soon as he found that out, he kicked him right out, and he was the only guy who agreed to meet with prosecutors and talk about Epstein. The only guy in our whole country that had any information. He said, "I'm willing to talk about that," and the prosecutors ignored him.
I've heard similar things. I've heard kind of conflicting stuff, but I've also heard what Chris said about it. I think it's clear Epstein didn't kill himself, and I'm not 100% sure he's even dead, and that he wasn't.
That part of it is like we should all know that.
Yeah, he didn't kill himself. He was a terrible pedophile. Someone asked me recently. Yeah, someone recently asked me, they're like, what would libertarians do about pedophilia? And I said, we'd kick them out of Washington. I think that, we've seen just how many powerful people are involved in that. And it's actually very unsettling because it seems like people that are attracted to that level of power are using it some of the most harmful ways, even when it comes to actually harming children in a sexual way. I think it's absolutely disgusting. It makes me sick. Go ahead, Dan.
How much of that do you believe as far as the adrenochrome stuff and the Pizzagate? I mean, I'm not even going there because if I can't prove it, I'm not going to talk about it.
Yeah. So Pizzagate was pretty well debunked. I don't believe in Pizzagate and a lot of the other QAnon stuff, but I do believe we have seen more. That we saw Prince Andrew, we saw Ghislaine Maxwell, we saw Harvey Weinstein, we saw all of the people in Epstein's black book that were protected. We saw the Clintons. There's a lot of bad stuff happening, and it just seems that the people that have the most power in almost sociopathic ways are also attracted to that. So I'm not sure there's this pedophile cabal as much as just powerful people are attracted to that.
This is what makes sense to me, right? So if you want to get rid of Christianity, you want to make it have a real bad name, put people who suck in power in those institutions, put just horrible people that would be like molesting children. Maybe something about this 14-year-old and you groom him to be one of the top dudes, and that person has some of that in them. Wouldn't that be the most easiest person to control? And I think there's an element of that in our government where it's like these people have some stuff in the closet as far as some skeletons, and they don't want anyone to know that stuff, and that's probably why they're so damn easily controlled.
Oh, I'm sure.
Hey, Chris,
I'm sure of that.
Chris, I just want to say real quick, we talk about conspiracies all over the place on my show, so if you're interested, we don't have to talk about politics at all over there.
I love that, man. No, I love all that stuff because, a lot of it's common sense. It's like, well, if I was like the be all end all of power and I had all the money in the world and I really cared about control, I'd put the worst people in power. I'd put people who are the worst possible people so that I could go, hey, you want everybody knowing about this, what you did? So it would be the easiest way to control people ever.
I don't disagree with that at all, actually. I agree with that entirely. Dan, go on to the next thing. We'll do like 2 more and then we can wrap up.
Cool. Well, if there's only 2 more, I got to make sure they're good. Cody Lee asked, Chris, what would it take for you to vote for Joe and Spike in 2020? What would you have to see differently?
I would have to see that they could win, number one, and number two, that they would renegotiate all existing free trade deals into trade deals I felt were more fair to the United States worker. So that would be it. Whoever can get closest to that gets my vote.
Why don't we do a compromise, Chris? We will eliminate the regulations that make it unaffordable to do business here, and then we can revisit things and see what, if anything, would even be needed in terms of trade deals once we saw the amount of jobs coming back here.
Completely in agreement that if you cut regulation to the point where no one's playing referee, then you're going to have better business going on. There's just I am completely in agreement with that. Everybody knows that. Okay. The reason why that doesn't happen is because of power and because people slip in pork in these bullshit bills.
Yep. So
we, like anyone who is, but this is why they use identity politics, because the shit they say doesn't work on guys like us because we can see the truth for what it is. So they have to make it about the next new racism thing or the next, like identity politics thing. I mean, they don't talk about economics. They don't talk about what's good for the average middle class worker. They talk about what group of people are getting shafted the most.
Well, so there's actually a good point there, and I want to. Yeah, so I want to talk about the discourse of identity politics, which, by the way, advocating, and because I'm not against the idea of identity politics, because advocating for the middle class is in and of itself a form of idpol. It is in and of itself a form of identity politics, not racial politics, but a form of identity. You are taking an identity and advocating on their behalf, and so there's not really anything necessarily wrong with that. It's really what the outcome is that we're trying to get for them.
That's the only identity I care about.
And that's fair. That's the only one you care about, and there are others who have ones that they care about. Dan, let's go with one more, and then we can wrap things up because we're coming up on 2 hours.
Okay, if we got to wrap up on one more, I'm going to go with Melissa Teams asked, and she said, this is a deal breaker, so whatever you guys say here is going to determine the winner, I suppose. She said, who was the best Spice Girl? This is a deal breaker, so take it away.
Scary Spice.
Oh, man, yeah, scary.
Scary.
Yeah, wow. It's scary. You
can tell what kind of people Spike and I are. What Spice Girl we like the most.
Yeah, no, scary. I don't think it's. I personally not even interested in the other ones, honestly.
No, the only one
I'm happily married. I'm not interested in any of them, but none of them take my fancy.
For sure.
So do we want to do a quick recap, if we can, to point at the different things that you guys agreed on through this?
Yeah, go. Do you want to do that, Dan?
I don't have them written down, but okay. I just think it'd be a good way to wrap the conversation by pointing out, the middle ground.
So I will start with this, and then I will let Chris finish, and then I'll wrap up after that. I'll let Chris have the last word. I think what we largely agreed on, and Chris can correct me where he thinks I'm wrong, I think where we largely agreed is that government largely is a bad actor when it comes to getting involved in the lives and rights and properties of the American people. And that, the less involved government is, the better off the outcomes will be for the American people, especially the common American people, the middle class, the working class, the poor, and so forth. The people that are the marginalized communities and everything else, those with the least will do better in a system whereby the most powerful people have less control of their lives. I think where we disagree, and this is in my opinion, is where I think that Chris may be applying it inconsistently, where he is against government being involved in, believes that government is largely a bad actor, but then that government policies policies in certain arenas would make those things better, as opposed to just getting them out entirely. And whether it's on policing, or whether it's on community problems or crime, or whether it's on trade or immigration or anything else, that I believe that because government is a bad actor, they should just be as little involved, preferably not involved at all as possible. Whereas Chris believes that there is a better implementation that could happen in order to make these same politicians and same policies fair and better for the people who need it the most. And then I'll let Chris kind of wrap it up.
Fair. That's totally fair. But what I would say to that is, I would love the way you want it to be, but the reality is that we do have policy. And even Trump himself, I'm going to slash regulations left and right. And, there's a lot of people who are still saying you didn't do nearly enough, dude. And I'm probably one of those guys, but he did something. So that's all I'm looking at. He did something towards that level. He did something towards the free trade stuff. But it's like we can talk about how bad government is all the time, but it's like, who's willing to do a few things that are good? Just a few things. That's all you need to do. You convince me you can do a few things in 4 years and you got my vote. Because every other freaking party just lip service. Trump comes in here and says, I'm going to do these 3 things that nobody's been talking about for 30, 40 years. And he wins the damn presidency, of course, by doing that. And so I just want more of that. I want more.
So you're saying all Spike has to do is a few good things and he's got your vote.
Like 3 big things that are the immigration, trade, and tax and regulation of businesses. Those 3 things are it.
We're going to do more than 3 big things, not just on those, but on everything else. And before I let you guys go, Chris, what do you want to plug before we go? What do you want to plug? What's going on?
We just dropped a new record July 3rd. It's called Shadow Work. Check it out. Spotify or Pandora or whatever. We love coming out and playing live for fans and for new fans and all that good stuff. And I'm stoked at all libertarians that heard tonight's show, and to both of you for having me on. I appreciate you, and we should definitely do this again, man.
Yeah, that was fun. I had a good time. Dan, tell us what you want to plug, and then I'll wrap things up on our side.
Sure thing. My show is called The System is Down. We talk about all the uncomfortable topics like conspiracies, politics, and religion. We do so in a civil manner to change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time and be humans with each other. You can check that out at tsidpod.com. And Spike, thanks so much for having me. And Chris, it was awesome chatting with you, man.
Right on, brother.
And also, by the way, if you like our Jorgensen Cohen videos, our viral videos, Dan Smoldt is the guy who does. Dan Smoltz, I'm sorry, I forget which name we're doing. Dan is the one who makes all those.
Don't use my slave name.
Don't use. Dan Smoltz. That's much better than Smoldt, is the one who made all of that. He is a freaking wizard, and I have nothing but good things to say about him, and I fully intend to use as much of his services as possible until he prices himself out of the market, because he's just become so fantastic that I can't even afford him anymore. So, folks, thanks again for tuning into My Fellow Americans. Thank you, Dan and Chris, for being on the show. Folks, I'm going to be flying out to Chicago on Sunday morning, actually. I'm going to be doing a bunch of events in Illinois, in Chicago, in Springfield, and Peoria, and I will be back here on Muddy Waters Media on Tuesday for the Muddy Waters of Freedom, where Matt Wright and I parse through the week's news like the sweet summer boys that we are. And then tune in again next week on Wednesday, possibly for My Fellow Americans. I'm going to be out of town. I may not do one. If I do, then I will, and if not, then I will see you the week after. And folks, thanks again for tuning in, and remember, you are the power. God bless, guys.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.